Okay, we're talking, this is part three. We're continuing our discussion on the Arabic language. Just a digression, like the Arabic language, like any other language, has its um, colloquial side as well as its formal, as well as its informal side. And the informal side is Moroccan Arabic, and I thought you might like to see this. This is our language book that was given us back in 1975, and it's in Arabic, and I've learned to read it, but it's colloquial Arabic. So technically, it's not supposed to exist. But to say something like, I am an American worker, I shall work for 2 years in Morocco, I want to make the green card or want to have the green card. So in Moroccan Arabic, it would sound like this. It's been a while. Kula zibi gadi lachim de la maghreb hasu misi la dara de lam watane. Watane means I want. Kusamaraya ulteleb le worka la khandra de la zib. And also they say barakalofik, which means thank you, or God in you. That's everything's very God-centered with that. And when they say like barakalofik, or just kind of any personal message of emotion. And as you see in Facebook, I'm not Facebook, excuse me, as you see in PowerPoint, we're going to talk a little about the spread of Islam and look where it went all over the place. It started around 1622 and from the Prophet Muhammad down in Medina, and it went all the way to China. It went all the way down to Indonesia. It went to the south of Africa. It went to the far west of Africa. Got up in Spain, and actually, our version of what we know of Islam today is fundamentalism because of all the news. But there were Islamic scholars back in the day, and they exceeded the European scholars in science and mathematics, and right about till the time of the Inquisition, and when the Spanish and the European powers started pushing back the Arabs across the Mediterranean from Western Europe, did that influence wane? So also they went downhill too in the 1600s thereabouts, when they became less secular in their outlook and more fundamentalist. And then their thinking was, well, we only need one book, and that's the Quran. So they went downhill as far as science after that. They just, like what we have today, a lot of people just don't trust science. They just want their faith or whatever that faith may be, to overrule the science. Well, you can't do that and grow. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. So anyway, so the spread of Arabic went far and wide, and it tells you the basic 5 tenets of Islam. I won't quiz you on that. Just to know that it did spread, and it was a monotheistic religion like Judaism, like Christianity. Islam and Christianity have one thing in common: they do spread. They proselytize, whereas the Jewish faith, they do not. The Jewish faith, they didn't want to proselytize. They were happy being within their own community, and so that's why Judaism is not as widespread as Christianity or Islam. So I thought that was very interesting. Okay, so we'll pause and move on. Hang on. Now back to Islam. Islam was divided into two strings of thought. The Shiites believed that only relative of Muhammad should lead, and the Sunnis felt that any devout follower was qualified. So Sunnis, as it says in PowerPoint, dominated the expansion of Islam. The Shiites are mainly centered in Iran, Azerbaijan, Western Afghanistan, and Pakistan. So that's the cause of a lot of conflicts within the Islamic world, Shiite versus Muslim, and we see a lot of that in the news. Now, we're coming up on the Ottoman Empire. I want to talk about that for a second. Remember when we did the movie, and I mentioned that a little earlier. Where do they go? Well, it started out here in Turkey, basically, in kind of the Russian area, and then they kind of where they bordered, and they went all up into, let's see if I can make this larger so you can see it better. Hang on one second. Well, that's a little too large, isn't it? Is that my grandson running out there? I hear him popping around. Okay, here we go. All right, so we started over in what is Iran? Oh, it is my grandson. Okay, Aiden, come on, I'm on camera, kid. Granddaddy loves you. Okay, so and it spread all the way you can see around the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and kind of on the northern coast of, of the Mediterranean Sea all the way to Libya. And it went up, but more interesting, also went up in Hungary. That's why the Hungarian Ottoman Empire was big. And what happened was Germany came in during World War One. They sided with the Germans, and that's where we get into the story of Lawrence of Arabia, where um, Major T.E. Lawrence liberated or organized the Arabs to revolt against the Ottomans, the Turks and the Ottomans. And so at the end of World War One, the Ottoman Empire was on its way out, and in the 1922, I think it disappeared. And what we have is the modern Arab state. Over a period of turmoil and inside rebellion, Saudi Arabia came to be a country, and also Jordan came into its own being, Iraq came into its own being, and Iran was always kind of there, so no, it didn't really do much. And the modern day Turkey, and so the Ottoman Empire broke up, and thanks to Major Lawrence, as you see in the trailer in the film, The Ottoman Empire, they got their freedom from Turkey, or the Turkish dominated governments. So I'm going over, now we'll talk a little about oil and gas. Let me go over here. All righty. All right. So I'm going to shrink this back down. So after World War One, things started really kicking in because, see, the Arabs really didn't know what they had till the people looking for oil and gas started moving in the picture. And once that happened, we have a society beginning to split up into the haves and have-nots, because all the oil money were going to the top members of, say, Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Libya and Algeria and all that, whereas the common man did not really cash in. And so we started to have a fraction a little bit in society. And I'm going to pause again so I can close the door because my grandsons are out there and I can hear them. Hold on. So now we get into the geography of oil. I like that. And that just caused, it was a great advancement for the area in a lot of respects. They were able to modernize, build armies, military. The have and have-nots, though, in the society and between neighbors of those countries was not so good. It led to a lot of infighting and wars, on wars with a small w. So, and grabs for territory, as oil often will do. And so you now have an upper middle class thanks to the oil. And so therefore, we go on. Hang on, I gotta sneeze. We must remember that there is still a tradition in the Arabic societies of strong men, single leaders. Democracy is not a relative new, it's not embedded in that region of the world. It's a new concept. So what happened was things got so bad, in quote the Arab Spring, that there was a uprising of young people throughout a lot of the Arab and also the Northwest Asian countries. So more of the Arab, called the Arab Spring, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, and Bahrain. So the domino effect, remember we talked about that, just, starting out in Tunisia and then working its way eastward into Egypt and to, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt. And so we still like in Libya, went south because Muammar Gaddafi, who was a really bad guy, strong man, he got overthrown and eventually I think we took him out, or somebody, Navy SEALs or somebody took him out. But still they couldn't coalesce into a government, and that is a failed state. Libya is a total failed state. There's nothing ruling that country. It's just all tribal infighting. And that's the premise of a lot of outsiders that because the Arabs just fight among themselves all the time, And that's how the Europeans before World War I was able to colonize them, because they used one tribe against another. And we go back to Major Lawrence, which unified them. And then we have today Bashar al-Assad in Syria, who's a real bad man. He poisons gas his own people. He's kind of like Saddam Hussein in Iraq. But Hussein's dead, but Assad's still living thanks to Russia. So the Arab Spring was great and everybody was excited, but like most revolutions, it went south and people got back into their old ways and nothing was ever done. That's very common. Not long after Arab Spring, of course, Al-Qaeda, our enemy, and also ISIS, our enemy, very brutal organizations with terror, seized upon the fact of identity. The young people had to go somewhere. They're all in their 20s or their teens and 20s and have no jobs. They have no power. They're living with their parents, or if they had parents, or they're just aimlessly looking for something. And so Al-Qaeda and ISIS was a strong pull because it gave them a sense of identity, wrongly albeit, but it still attracted a lot of people. Remember, on a lot of Facebook or a lot of social media, the Islamic State was portraying itself as some great cause, and a lot of people foolishly went for that and found out that it was a disaster, how awful and evil they were. So ISIS is still kind of running around, I think, around Syria or Iraq. This book is out of date, even though we say they've been defeated, but they really haven't. They're still in pockets of them in Iraq and borderline of Syria, and they call themselves, they want a caliphate, and that's what al-Baghdadi was, who was killed gratefully by our Navy SEALs. Awful person. Just a murderer, rapist, just the worst kind of person. And so they're looking for a caliphate to replace him. I think they found his assistant or third down the line, and soon we'll do away with him, hopefully. So anyhow, they're quiet right now because they haven't got a lot of power. So and I think people in the region saw the ISIS for what they were, but we still have to deal with Al-Qaeda as a terrorist network. So in addition to that, in addition to the terrorist networks, we have a great flood of refugees coming out of Africa below the Sahara, and they're moving. They want to get to Europe, and they're just causing a big, massive influx of people into the North African, Southwest Asian realm. And they're all headed to Italy or Spain anyway. And by the way, the land, there's hardly any land. There's hardly any. That's a choke point. The Gibraltar Mediterranean right here in North Africa and Morocco to Spain. So that said, it's an easy in. You can hop a freighter, hop a boat. If you're lucky, a plane, and get into Spain and start moving your way through Europe. Everybody's trying. Italy's really having a tough time with Tunisia and Libya, refugees coming out of there. People into Greece, they're dying at sea. Human trafficking. They'll take money and run them over to Europe, they say, and they usually die. They come as far south as Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, and all that area, and also down in the Sudan, Ethiopia. Look how far down, even Kenya. So they're all running towards Europe. That's a destabilizing effect, and it's still going on today. So with that said, let's go over here and talk about our regions of the African Southwest Asian realm. And we see in the map, we have, of course, the Middle East, the 6 regions. Remember that I said on, what was that page, 221, Egypt and the Lower Nile Basin, Middle East, Arabian Peninsula, the Empire States, the Maghreb, West Africa, and the transition zone. So there's the transition zone. That's below the desert, but below the Sahara. Sahara is a big place. Look at that, from here to here. So with that, I may stop. Let's see how much. 14 minutes. Oh my gosh. Let me stop on this one. I'll continue the next one. How do I stop it? There we go.